Hey sixth graders, don't forget that before watching this video, you should have completed 15 minutes of MobyMax. So if you've done that, awesome, just keep watching the video. But if you haven't, pause the video, sign into MobyMax, and make sure you do your 15 minutes for today. Over the past few weeks, we have been reading a lot of fiction stories, or stories that have a lot of imagination and made-up elements to it, things that are not real. Today we're going to read a very different kind of story. We're going to start reading nonfiction stories, or stories that are based on fact and real things. As I read this story today, I want you to think of two things. I want you to focus on what this nonfiction book is about, and then I want you to think about what makes nonfiction writing look and sound different from fiction stories. So the title of our book today is Bugs Up Close, and this was written by Diane Swanson, and the photographs are by Paul Davidson. One way nonfiction is different than fiction stories is nonfiction usually includes a table of contents, so that way you can find different areas much more quickly. So if you wanted to read just about the insects' bodies, the exoskeleton, legs, wings, you know what page to turn to exactly to read about that specific piece of information. Another thing you usually see in nonfiction writing is a glossary and an index. Traditionally, a glossary appears at the end of a book, and it includes terms within that book that are either newly introduced or uncommon or specialized. So in the case of this book, they probably use a lot of terms about insects that the reader is not familiar with, so they define it in the glossary. The purpose of the index is to have a list of words or phrases so that way you can find useful material relating to that word or phrase in the book. Those are just a few elements that nonfiction has that I wanted to draw your attention to before I start reading. So as I read the story, see what other nonfiction elements you can notice that you don't typically see in fiction stories. So the title of this is Insects. You are sitting under a tree when something tickles your toes. You brush it off, and the tiny critter crawls away through the grass. Then you notice a green bug hopping by, and you see yellow wings fluttering above your head. Creeping, jumping, flying, little creatures seem to be everywhere. But not all of them are insects. The insects are the ones that have 3 main body sections. Most insects also have antennae, wings, and 6 legs. 3 on each side. Look at the picture of a flower fly. You can see 3 separate body sections and 3 legs along one side of its body. It has wings, too, and short antennae on its head. The flower fly is an insect. The daddy longlegs and spider are not insects. The daddy longlegs has only 1 main body section, and the spider has just 2. They each have more than 6 legs. Neither of them have wings or antennae. Insect or not, sometimes you have to look closely to tell. And then it has pictures and then captions underneath the pictures. This chapter is called Bodies. Notice the 3 main sections in the body of this wasp. Like other insects, it has a head, a thorax, which is the middle section, and an abdomen, which is the rear section. On some insects, it's hard to tell where the thorax ends and the abdomen begins. A covering that overlaps them can make the 2 sections look like one. The head is where you will find the eyes, mouth parts, and usually antennae. A short neck often joins the head to the thorax. The thorax has 6 legs attached to it, 3 on each side. Many insects also have wings on their thorax, and there may be openings that are used for breathing. The abdomen is usually where most of the insects' breathing openings are found. Special parts, such as stingers, are sometimes attached to the abdomen too. Weird looking? You bet. But insects' bodies are designed to help bugs survive. So this is the other half of the picture, and it has a caption and another bubble of information that says a narrow waist makes it possible for a wasp to turn around in tight spaces, such as inside a nest. This chapter is called Legs. Most insects have 6 legs. The front and back legs on one side often step with the middle leg on the other side. The remaining 3 legs take the next step. This way of walking, plus all the joints in their legs, helps insects travel smoothly, even over bumpy ground. That's how the box elder bug in the picture can move easily over an uneven surface. Insect legs usually end in a pair of claws that can grip rough things, such as tree bark. Between the claws are often one of the 2 sacs that may be very sticky. The sacs help insects cross smooth surfaces, such as windows. But for most insects, legs are more than walking tools. Grasshoppers, for instance, have large, powerful back legs for jumping. In a single leap, they can cover a distance 15 times the length of their bodies. And dung beetles, among others, use their front legs like shovels to dig through soil. The praying mantis and monarch butterflies on these pages have different uses for their legs. The large front legs of the praying mantis can move lightning fast to seize its prey. The butterfly tastes with the tips of some of its legs. When it finds something sweet, it sucks up the food. This chapter is called Exoskeletons. Unlike you, an insect has no bones. Instead, it has a strong outer covering called an exoskeleton. This covering supports many of the insect's muscles. It also protects the inside of the insect from injury. The exoskeleton, like the one on this blowfly, is made of separate plates. Soft, flexible material between the plates allows the insect to expand as it feeds and to bend its legs when it walks. A thin, waxy layer in the exoskeleton prevents the insect from drying out. An insect grows, but its exoskeleton doesn't. When the covering becomes too tight, the insect molts, or sheds its exoskeleton. Many insects molt 5 or 6 times during their lives, but some molt more than 50 times. As an insect molts, it exposes the larger, softer exoskeleton that has formed beneath the old one. The insect is at risk from weather and predators until this new covering hardens. Exoskeletons may be dull or shiny, drab or brightly colored. They may be thick or thin, smooth or bumpy, spiny or hairy. So before reading Bugs Up Close, I asked you to keep in mind 2 questions. The first one was, what is this nonfiction book about? And the second is, what makes nonfiction writing look and sound different from fiction? So for the first question, what is this nonfiction book about? Hopefully your answer was along the lines of different kinds of bugs and different facts or things about them. And then the second question, what makes nonfiction writing look and sound different from fiction? Hopefully you were thinking that it tells more facts and it's not trying to tell a story like a fiction book does. We are going to continue to read nonfiction books and examine how they differ from fiction stories. Animals, like insects in the book we read today, are a very popular topic of nonfiction for young readers. What I want you to do now, in your language arts notebook or in your Google Drive in the folder labeled Writing Ideas, I want you to write nonfiction writing ideas and then answer this question. What other topics about animals would you like to know more about? Your language arts notebook or the document in your Google Drive might look something like this. I titled this Nonfiction Writing Ideas, and I listed some nonfiction writing ideas about animals that you might be interested in. You could write a nonfiction story about breeds of dogs. You could learn everything there is about sharks and write a paper about it. You could write a nonfiction paper about migration and specifically focus on butterflies. Or maybe you're really curious about extinct animals and you could write about them. And then within extinct animals, maybe you find that you're really interested in dinosaurs and you could write about dinosaurs for your nonfiction story. Once you come up with some ideas, what I want you to do for independent writing time today is you can add more ideas to your nonfiction list. You could work on a piece you started earlier, or you could start a new piece of writing that focuses on nonfiction.